On Thanksgiving, my mother-in-law asked, "When are you giving us grandchildren?" My wife laughed, "I'll have my kids with a real man." I just smiled and left. The next day, I called a lawyer. "All right, Reddit. My wife disrespected me in front of her entire family, so I made sure she regretted every word. Grab your snacks, this one gets real nasty. Name's Lucas, 33 male. I'd been at Harold and Lydia's house since 7 that morning, helping set up for their annual Thanksgiving dinner. 5 years I'd been with Brielle. 5 years of holiday dinners at her parents' McMansion in the foothills, proving myself to people who looked at my work boots like I'd tracked in something from the yard. I'm a plumber, been doing it for 9 years. Commercial and residential, everything from restaurant kitchens to custom home builds, emergency calls at 3 in the morning when someone's basement is flooding. Good money, honest work. Brielle pulled as a senior financial analyst at some firm downtown. On paper, I knew what it looked like. Trade school dropout marries college girl with a master's degree. Her friends made sure I knew it too, with their little comments about how refreshing it was that Brielle didn't care about status. But I showed up. That's what I did. I showed up early, stayed late, remembered birthdays, helped Harold with his endless home improvement projects. Last spring, I spent 3 weekends replumbing his guest bathroom, replaced the old galvanized pipes with copper, installed a new water heater, fixed the drainage issue that had been causing problems for years. He'd clap me on the shoulder afterward, hand me a drink, and we'd sit there on the patio like a father and son. I thought I'd earned something. That morning started fine. I made my contribution to the feast, a sweet potato casserole from my mom's recipe. She'd passed 5 years ago, and this dish was the one thing I had left of her Thanksgivings. The first crack appeared around 10 in the morning. I was in the kitchen helping Lydia prep vegetables when Brielle walked in, already dressed in some designer outfit. She looked at the sweet potato casserole I'd brought, the one I'd spent 2 hours on that morning, and wrinkled her nose. "You're not actually putting that on the main table, are you? Mom has a whole menu planned." Lydia, to her credit, said nothing, but she didn't defend me either. "It's a family recipe," I said. "Thought it would be nice to contribute." "Contribute?" Brielle laughed. "Babe, you contributed by moving furniture. Let the people who know what they're doing handle the food." I let it go. By noon, more family had arrived. Brielle's brother Cooper and his wife, various aunts and uncles, cousins with kids running around. My buddy Ramon from work had tagged along since his wife was visiting her sister out of state, and I was grateful for the backup. The house filled with the smell of roasting turkey and the sound of football on the big screen. The second crack came during appetizers. We were all gathered in the living room, picking at cheese plates and pretending to care about the game, when Brielle's aunt asked what I did for work. Before I could answer, Brielle jumped in. "He's a plumber," she said in this condensing tone, "but he's looking into other options. Management, maybe. Something with more growth potential." I wasn't looking into other options. I loved my job. I was good at it, but I smiled and nodded because that's what you do when you're the outsider who married in. Ramon caught my eye from across the room. He'd worked with me for 6 years. The look on his face said what I was thinking. What was that about? Then this happened before dinner. I was helping Harold carve the turkey. Brielle walked by, phone in hand, barely looking up. "Make sure you wash your hands before you touch anything else," she said. "You've been moving stuff from the garage all day." "I washed them twice already." "Well, wash them again. I don't want garage grime on my food." Harold said nothing. By the time we sat down for dinner, something was off. Brielle was wound tighter than I'd ever seen her, snapping at everyone, but especially at me. 22 people around the table. I sat between Brielle and Ramon, across from Cooper and his wife. Harold and Lydia presided over opposite ends like royalty. Lydia said grace. We all said amen. And then, as platters started passing around the table, that's when Lydia asked the question. "So when are you two finally giving us grandchildren? Cooper and Holly are already trying. I want grandbabies while I'm still young enough to enjoy them." The table went quiet. This question had been coming up for 3 years, and every time, Brielle deflected. "Not yet. When the timing is right. When we have more saved." And I'd stopped pushing. I started to answer. Something about how we were still discussing timelines, but Brielle cut me off. "Not with this one. Not, I'll have my kids with a real man," she said, laughing, swirling her glass. "Maybe when I find someone with real ambition." Dead silence. Harold's fork clattered against his plate. Lydia's eyes narrowed with satisfaction, like she'd been waiting years for Brielle to finally say what everyone was thinking. Cooper choked on his drink. 22 people heard my wife tell them I wasn't a real man. That 5 years of marriage was just her killing time until something better came along. But here's the thing about moments like that. Everyone expects you to explode. They expect the scene, the yelling, But I did the opposite. I set down my napkin, stood up, and looked directly at Harold and Lydia. "You're right," I said, voice calm. "Someone else will give you grandchildren." Then I walked out of the dining room, grabbed my keys, and headed towards the door. Footsteps behind me. Harold caught up as I reached my truck, grabbed my arm hard enough to leave marks. "Where are you going? You're embarrassing my daughter." "I'm embarrassing her? She just told your entire family I'm not a real man. She announced she'll have kids with someone else while sitting next to her husband. It was a joke. No need to be dramatic. Let go of my arm, Harold. I'm leaving. You're not going anywhere until you apologize to Brielle." I laughed. "Apologize for what?" Ramon appeared behind me. 6'3", 240 pounds. Looks like he played linebacker in another life. The kind of guy you want watching your back when things get sideways. "Everything okay here, Lucas?" Harold let go of my arm. "This is a family matter." "Doesn't look like Lucas's family anymore, does it?" Ramon said. "Based on what I just heard." I got in my truck, Ramon in the passenger seat. In my rearview mirror, Harold stood with his arms crossed, while Brielle came out the front door. Phone already in hand, face twisted with annoyance like I was the problem here. I drove away. Brielle showed up at our apartment an hour later. Ramon had already taken an Uber home, giving me space to pack. She stormed in, heels clicking on the tile. "How dare you? How dare you humiliate me in front of everyone?" she said. I kept packing. "I agree, it was pretty humiliating. You just left, in front of everyone. My parents are mortified." "Your parents are mortified? That's rich. Not sure who is supposed to be mortified here. It was obviously a joke. Everyone knew I was kidding." I turned to face her. "Okay, explain it to me then. Walk me through the funny part. You said you'll have kids with a real man. Where's the punchline?" She rolled her eyes. "You're being so sensitive. This is exactly what I'm talking about. A real man would just brush it off. A real man. There's that phrase again. So your definition of a real man is someone who just takes humiliation and doesn't say anything. Got it. Where are you even going to go? You can't afford a place on your own." I smiled at that, because she didn't know about the savings account I'd been building for 4 years. The one I'd started after the first time her friends made snide comments about my career, and she just laughed along with them. Call it intuition. Call it self-preservation. Either way, I had $34,000 sitting in an account she didn't know existed. I'll figure it out. This is ridiculous. You're throwing away 5 years over one comment? No, I'm throwing away 5 years over you showing me exactly what you think of me. She watched me pack, arms crossed. What about the apartment? The lease is in both our names. I'll pay my half until I'm off the lease. That's fair? You're abandoning me and you're talking about fair. I grabbed my work boots, my toolbox, the framed photo of my mom from the nightstand. I'll be back Tuesday for the rest of my things. I walked out. Didn't argue. Just left. My friend Sergio lived alone in a condo near the university. He'd gone through a divorce 2 years ago, knew exactly what the early days looked like. When I showed up at his door that night, duffel bag in hand, he took one look at my face and said, "Guest room." I told him everything over drinks. He listened without interrupting, which is rare for him. When I finished, he set down his drink and shook his head. "That's so messed up, man. You got a plan?" "Working on it." "You need a lawyer?" "Probably. I know a guy. Helped me during my divorce. Let's destroy this beach." I saved the contact. Slept good that night. Tuesday afternoon, I went back to the apartment to get the rest of my things. Brought Ramon and Sergio as witnesses, just in case. Brielle wasn't supposed to be there. She was supposed to be at work. But when I opened the door, there she was, sitting on the couch with Lydia, like they were waiting for an intervention. "Good. You brought an audience," Lydia said, standing up. "Maybe they can talk some sense into you." I walked past them to the bedroom, started loading boxes. Ramon and Sergio took positions near the door. Lydia followed me. "Do you have any idea what you're doing? Harold hasn't slept in 3 days. Brielle is devastated. You ruined Thanksgiving." "Brielle seems fine to me," I said, pulling clothes from the closet. "She was fine enough to humiliate me in front of 30 people. That was a misunderstanding. You're being dramatic. Brielle has apologized." "No, she hasn't. And I don't want an apology." Lydia moved closer, lowering her voice. "Listen to me carefully, Lucas. You're going to drop this little tantrum, come back home, and pretend this never happened, or things are going to get very uncomfortable for you." I smiled at her. "Is that a threat?" "It's reality. Harold and I know everyone in this city. Country club, church, the business community. One bad Yelp review from the right person, one conversation at the right dinner party, and suddenly your phone stops ringing." Sergio stepped into the doorway. "You might want to watch what you say, ma'am." Three witnesses in the room. Lydia's face twisted with contempt. Who asked you? This is a private family matter. Lucas is my family, Sergio said. And you just threatened him. I finished loading the last box. Lydia, I don't want your money. I don't want anything from Brielle except a clean divorce. But if you keep making threats, I'll make sure people hear about that too. And something tells me your reputation matters more to you than mine does to me. You wouldn't dare. Try me. I carried my boxes out, loaded them into Ramon's truck, and left. But I knew it wasn't over. These people had money, connections, and a desperate need to protect their image. I was about to become a problem they needed to eliminate Lucas. The next 2 weeks proved me right. First, my job got a call. Someone had reported me to my employer, claiming I'd stolen equipment from a job site. Complete fabrication, but I had to go through a whole investigation, pulling invoices and inventory logs, matching serial numbers, before being cleared. My boss, Joe, was understanding about it, but he warned me that someone was clearly trying to cause problems. Then, things started getting worse. Someone keyed my truck. Long scratch down the driver's side, spelling out "loser" in jagged letters. No cameras in Sergio's parking lot, no witnesses. But the message was crystal clear. I stood there in the morning light, running my finger along the grooves. Ramon called me that evening. You see what they did to your truck? Yeah, can't prove it, but I have a good idea. The next morning, I met with Sam Castillo, the divorce attorney Sergio had recommended. His office was downtown. Sam was maybe 55, gray at the temples. I laid out the whole situation. The public humiliation, the threats, the harassment campaign, the keyed truck. He listened without interrupting, took notes, and asked a few questions. Here's the deal, he said when I finished. Arizona is a no-fault divorce state. Doesn't matter who said what at any Thanksgiving dinner. The marriage is dissolved based on irretrievable breakdown, and assets are split equitably. So she gets half of everything regardless? Technically, including that separate savings account. I sat back. Even though she didn't know about it, it was funded during the marriage with marital income. Legally, it's community property. She'd be entitled to half. He held up a finger. However, divorce isn't just about what you're entitled to. It's about what you're willing to fight for. And right now, you have something they want more than $17,000. Which is? Silence. You've got witnesses to threats, documented harassment, a pattern of behavior that would look very bad for a family that cares about their image. If this goes to trial, all of that becomes public record. Every business associate, every country club friend, every colleague at Brielle's firm would know exactly what kind of people the Ortegas really are. So I trade keeping quiet for keeping the savings. You trade not making their lives miserable for them, not making yours miserable. Document everything. If they keep pushing, they're basically handing you ammo. 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, things went to shit when Harold decided to talk things differently. I was at Joe's shop finishing up paperwork when my phone buzzed. Text from a number I didn't recognize. We need to talk. Meet me at the coffee shop on Campbell. 6 p.m. Harold. I showed Sergio. What do you think? I think you should go. Why? Because if you don't, they'll say you refuse to negotiate. If you do and something happens, you've got more documentation. So I went to the coffee shop, but I didn't go alone. Ramon was at a table near the window, pretending to read a newspaper like some kind of spy. Sergio was in his car in the parking lot, phone ready. Harold was already there when I arrived. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. This has gone far enough. You've made your point. Now it's time to be reasonable. I sat down across from him. Reasonable how? Brielle wants to work things out. She's willing to acknowledge that her comment was inappropriate. That's the word you're going with. What word would you prefer? Cruel, nasty, deliberately humiliating. Take your pick. His jaw tightened. You're not exactly innocent here. You walked out on my daughter in front of everyone. You've refused to take her calls. You're living with some friend instead of your wife. You keyed my truck. That wasn't us. Right. Total coincidence that it spelled out loser right after Lydia told me I was worthless. His face reddened. We're offering you a chance to fix this. Come home, work things out. Everyone saves face, no divorce, no lawyers. And what does Brielle have to do? Apologize? That's not necessary. She humiliated me in front of your entire extended family. If she wants to fix this, she can start by apologizing in front of the same audience. That's never going to happen. I figured. Not interested anyways. It's too late. I stood up to leave. Harold grabbed my wrist. You think you can just walk away from my family? You think anyone's going to believe a plumber over us? Let go of my arm, Harold. You're making a mistake. We've given you every chance to be reasonable, and you keep throwing it back in our faces. Who do you think you are? You must be grateful we've taken you into this family in the first place. Ramon appeared at my shoulder. Maybe you want to let go of him before this gets ugly. Harold looked at Ramon, seemed to remember we weren't alone. The coffee shop had gone quiet, everyone watching the confrontation. He released my wrist, but his face was red, veins visible in his neck. Yeah, this isn't over, Harold said. Then he walked out. Ramon sat back down, but kept his phone in his hand. You okay? Fine. You get any of that? Got all of it. Audio's clear too. But Harold wasn't done. Because he pulled this shit 2 weeks later. I was leaving Sergio's condo early in the morning, headed to my truck for work, coffee in hand, thinking about the bathroom remodel I needed to finish at a house across town. A car pulled into the parking lot and blocked me in. Harold got out, face red, moving like a man who hadn't slept in days. You think you're clever? Telling your lawyer about our conversation? I'm protecting myself. From what? We offered you a chance to fix this. We tried to be reasonable. And you're making us look like monsters. You keyed my truck. You tried to sabotage my work. Your wife threatened my career. That wasn't... He was sputtering now, face getting redder. This is your fault. All of it. You couldn't just let it go. You couldn't just accept that Brielle made a mistake and move on like a man. Like a real man, you mean? Something snapped behind his eyes. He came at me fast. First punch caught me in the jaw before I could react. Coffee cup flying, hitting the ground and shattering. The world tilted. His second swing was sloppy, fueled by rage. I slipped it, drove my fist straight into his nose, felt cartilage crunch. Blood sprayed across his shirt, and he staggered back, hands going to his face. You bastard! What did you expect? But the thing is, the man was built like a tank. 58 years old, but still had 50 pounds on me, most of it in his shoulders and chest. He tackled me before I could set my feet, drove me into the asphalt like I weighed nothing. My head bounced off the pavement, stars exploding behind my eyes. I got my hands up, caught him with an elbow to the temple that split his eyebrow open. He pinned my arms with his knees, his weight crushing my chest. I bucked, twisted, and managed to get one arm free. Hit him again, a short hook that snapped his head sideways. But he just smiled. Then his fist came down like a hammer. Once. Twice. I felt my lips split. I got my legs up, hooked his neck, and threw him off using every ounce of strength I had left. We both scrambled to our feet. He was breathing hard, blood running from his nose and eyebrow. I wasn't much better. He charged again. I met him halfway, got inside his reach, drove 2 hard shots into his ribs. He grunted, wrapped me up in a bear hug, and squeezed. Felt something crack in my side. Couldn't breathe. I headbutted him and shoved him back. But I was done. Ribs screaming, vision swimming. He kicked my legs out from under me, and I went down hard. Then the kicks came. Side, back, arms when I raised them to protect my head. Each one a dull thud I felt more than heard. Somewhere far away, shouting. Sergio's voice. Then hands pulling Harold back. And suddenly, I was just lying there. Harold was on his knees 10 feet away. Sergio between us. The old man looked like he'd gone 3 rounds with a blender. Broken nose, split eyebrow, blood all over his clothes. I lay on the asphalt, ribs screaming. 5 years of loyalty. This is what it got me. But at least I hadn't gone down like a punk. Sergio's face appeared in my vision. Don't move. I'm calling 911. I grabbed his arm, pulled him closer despite the pain. The security camera, by the entrance. It covers this whole lot. Sergio looked, saw the camera, and grinned despite the situation. You brilliant bleeding idiot. Yeah, I think it caught everything. The ambulance came. Police came. Harold tried to leave, but Ramon had pulled up by then. Blocked his car with Sergio's SUV, standing there with his arms crossed like he was daring Harold to try something. They arrested him on the spot. Assault and battery. 2 cracked ribs, bruised kidney, split lip, black eye that would take 3 weeks to fade. The ER doc said I was lucky it wasn't worse. Harold Ortega, successful real estate developer, pillar of the community, arrested for attacking his son-in-law in a parking lot. Now about the divorce. It got ugly fast after that. Brielle hired a pit bull attorney from her father's network, some guy named Crowley who looked like he enjoyed making people cry. First thing he did was file a motion claiming I'd assaulted Harold, that I was the violent one, that Brielle feared for her safety and was seeking emergency protective orders. Sam wasn't impressed. They're going to try to flip the script, say you were the aggressor, but we have the security footage showing Harold charging you, throwing the first punch. Everything you did after that was self-defense. Their motion is dead on arrival. The criminal case moved faster than the divorce. Harold's lawyer tried to argue mutual combat and tried to get me charged too. The prosecutor watched the footage and laughed. Harold approaching aggressively, throwing the first punch, continuing to attack even after I tried to disengage. The fact that I defended myself didn't change who started it. Harold pleaded guilty to misdemeanor assault to avoid trial. Got 6 months probation, anger management classes, and a restraining order, keeping him at least 200 feet from me. His broken nose healed crooked. Meanwhile, Brielle was getting desperate. She'd lost her smug certainty somewhere between her father's arrest and the depositions. Her attorney started pushing for settlement, wanting to avoid a trial that would air all the family's dirty laundry in public. Sam advised me to take it slow. They're scared now. Every day this drags on, more people hear about what happened. Their reputation is worth more to them than money. Use that. So I used it. I countered every settlement offer with requests for more documentation. I demanded records of Lydia's communications about me. I subpoenaed Harold's business associates who might have been involved in the harassment campaign. Every request bought more time, and every day that passed was another day the Ortega family's carefully constructed image crumbled a little more. Brielle tried reaching out directly. Texts, voicemails, even showing up at Sergio's condo once while I was at work. I didn't respond to any of it. Ramon kept me updated on the gossip circuit. He knew people who knew people. The way it works in a city like Tucson, where everyone's connected by 2 degrees of separation. People are talking. Brielle's colleagues are asking questions. Her friends are picking sides. Most of them are picking yours. I don't care about sides. Yeah, you do. And that's okay. These people treated you like garbage for 5 years. Watching them face consequences feels like justice. The trial date was set for March. By then, the evidence was overwhelming. Sam had compiled a timeline of the harassment, the threats, the assault. He had Ramon's audio recording from the coffee shop, the security footage from the parking lot, my medical records, the police reports, the text messages. He had screenshots of texts Lydia had sent to Brielle, calling me trash who needed to learn his place. He had everything. 2 weeks before trial, Crowley called Sam with a new settlement offer. Brielle would keep the apartment and the furniture. I would keep my savings, all of it, not half, plus my truck and my tools. No spousal support from either party. Clean break, no ongoing obligations. Sam explained their reasoning. They're buying your silence on the harassment. $17,000 is nothing compared to what a public trial would cost them. Harold's business partners are already nervous. And one more thing. A written apology from Brielle and Lydia, acknowledging that their treatment of me had been inappropriate and harmful. Sam called me that evening. They caved. The apology is non-negotiable on their end, but they're willing to sign it to avoid trial. Why would they care about avoiding trial now? Because Harold's business partners threatened to pull out of 3 major projects if this goes public. The assault was bad enough. A full trial exposing the harassment campaign would finish him. They're looking at losing everything they built over 30 years. I thought about it for a long time. Thought about making them squirm in court, watching Brielle break down on the stand, seeing Harold's reputation destroyed completely. But I just wanted out, and I wanted them to know that I'd won. Not because I'd destroyed them, but because I'd refused to become them. Accept the settlement, I told Sam, but add one more condition. What's that? The apology gets read aloud at the same house where they held Thanksgiving, in front of as many family members as possible. Sam laughed. Sure. The settlement signing happened in Sam's office on a Tuesday morning. Brielle came with Crowley, looking smaller than I remembered. Lydia wasn't there. The restraining order kept Harold away, and apparently Lydia couldn't bring herself to face me. Fine by me. We signed the papers in silence. Division of assets, dissolution of marriage, mutual release of claims. 5 years of marriage reduced to 17 pages of legal terminology and a dozen signatures. When we finished, Sam slid across one more document, the apology letter, already signed by Brielle and Lydia. I read it. We, Brielle Ortega and Lydia Ortega, acknowledge that our treatment of Lucas during his marriage to Brielle was inappropriate, disrespectful, and harmful. We acknowledge that comments made at the family Thanksgiving in November were cruel and unjustified. We acknowledge that subsequent actions taken against Lucas, including threats and harassment, were wrong. We offer this apology not under duress, but in recognition of the harm we caused. The reading is scheduled for Saturday, Sam said. 2 o'clock at the Ortega residence. The family's been notified. Brielle's jaw tightened, but she still didn't speak. Crowley gathered his papers, nodded curtly at Sam, and led her out. The door closed behind them with a soft click. Ramon called me that evening. Heard the divorce is final. Signed and sealed. How do you feel? I looked around Sergio's guest room at the boxes still stacked in the corner. Free. Saturday came fast. I drove to the Ortega house with Sergio, Ramon following in his own car for moral support. The same house where I'd spent 5 Thanksgivings trying to prove I belonged. The Ortega family had gathered in the living room, maybe 20 people total. Same room where Brielle had humiliated me. Cooper was there with his wife, looking uncomfortable. Various aunts and uncles, a few cousins I recognized from Thanksgiving. Harold sat in the back, face like stone, legally required to stay at least 200 feet from me, but allowed to attend family functions if I approved. Lydia stood at the front of the room, apology letter in her trembling hands. She'd aged a decade in 4 months. The perfectly maintained image had cracked, showing something scared and desperate underneath. She read the letter in a voice that barely carried to the back of the room, kept stumbling over words, pausing to collect herself. When she got to the part about the harassment, her voice broke entirely. Cooper had to finish reading for her, his face burning with embarrassment. I watched the faces in the room, confusion giving way to shock, shock giving way to disgust. Not at me this time. At them. At the family they thought they knew. At the polished image that had been hiding something ugly underneath. When it was over, I stood up. Didn't say anything. Didn't deliver a speech about karma or justice. Just nodded once at Cooper, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor, and walked out. Sergio was waiting by the car. How was it? Good. You feel better? I feel done. That's better than better. We drove away from the Ortega house. The desert stretched out around us, all that empty space and possibility. And I thought about what comes next. Starting over at 33. New apartment, new routines, same job but different somehow. Lighter. Like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't know was there until I set it down. Ramon called me the next week with an update. Heard through the grapevine that Harold lost a client. Big commercial project, something about the developer not wanting the association. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. Brielle got passed over for a partner at her firm. Apparently the senior leadership felt she'd become a distraction. She worked there for 8 years. And spent the last 4 months in depositions and settlement negotiations. That's corporate America for you. I felt something that might have been satisfaction, might have been vindication, might have just been closure. But mostly I felt like I could breathe all the way to the bottom of my lungs for the first time in 5 years. 6 months after the divorce, I was doing better than pretty well. New apartment near downtown, still working for Joe, still fixing pipes and installing fixtures, still coming home with calluses on my hands and satisfaction in my chest. Started doing side work on weekends, building furniture in my garage, selling pieces at the local farmer's market. Turned out I was good at it. Sunday dinners at Sergio's place became a regular thing. Him and Ramon and Joe's nephew Ruben, who'd started working at the shop. We'd grill steaks, watch whatever game was on, trade stories about work and life. The kind of friendships I'd let slip during my marriage because Brielle never wanted me spending time with people who weren't from her world. I dated a little. Nothing serious. A woman from the farmer's market who bought 3 of my cutting boards. Pleasant enough, but I wasn't in a hurry. I'd spent 5 years with someone who didn't respect me. I could afford to be patient. I hadn't heard from Brielle during that time, but then she decided to show up out of nowhere. For the grand finale, I suppose. It was a Saturday afternoon in September, 10 months after Thanksgiving, 6 months after the divorce was final. I was in my garage working on a coffee table, radio playing classic rock, cold drink sweating on the workbench. Didn't hear the car pull up, didn't hear the footsteps on the driveway. Just looked up, and there she was, standing in the open garage door like a Jehovah's Witness who'd made some really bad life choices. She looked rough, designer to Target pipeline in full effect, hair that hadn't seen a salon in months, clothes that screamed, "I've discovered outlet malls," and the kind of tired that no amount of makeup can fix. 6 months ago, this would have hurt to see. Now it was just interesting. I set down my sanding block but didn't say anything. She'd driven all the way here. She could do the talking. Lucas's. "Hey, Brielle, what brings you here?" Can we talk?" she said. "About what exactly?" "I lost my job," she said. Silence. Then, "Oh, cool." She blinked. "They called it a mutual separation, but so you got fired. It's more complicated than..." "It's really not." She shifted her weight, thrown off her rehearsed script. I went back to sanding. "My parents' marriage is falling apart," she tried again. "My mom blames my dad blames my mom. They both blame me. They're talking about separating after 37 years. Huh. I blew sawdust off the table surface. That's rough. That's all you have to say? What do you want, a Hallmark card? Sorry your family imploded. Here's a picture of a sunset. You don't have to be cruel. I actually laughed. Right, I'm being cruel. She had the decency to wince. Look, I've had time to think about what I said. 10 months. Wow. Most people figure out they messed up faster than that. I was wrong about everything. The way I treated you, the things I said, letting my family. Brielle, I cut her off. I'm going to stop you right there because I can see where this is going, and I have a table to finish. I just want to know if there's any chance, any possibility. Maybe not now, maybe not for years, but someday. No. You didn't even let me finish. Not interested. The answer's no. But if you just... Still no. But I've changed. Great. Change somewhere else. She stood there, opening and closing her mouth like a fish. I picked up my sanding block and got back to work. You're really not going to give me anything? She asked. I gave you 5 years. That was plenty. I made a mistake. You made a choice. So that's it? I stopped sanding, looked at her directly. You want honesty? Fine. When I saw you standing there, my first thought wasn't anger or sadness. It wasn't even satisfaction. It was, I forgot to buy milk. That's what you are to me now. Nothing. Her face crumpled. For a second, I thought she might cry. Instead, she pulled herself together with visible effort. How can you be so... Brielle, I've got about 3 hours of daylight left and this table isn't going to sand itself. Was there anything else or did you just come here to watch me work? Because that's a little weird, even for you. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. You're really happy without me, aren't you? She said quietly. Thrilled. Couldn't be better. Living the dream. She looked around the garage one more time. At the half-finished furniture, the organized tools on pegboard walls, the life she'd decided wasn't good enough. Then she turned and walked back to her car. I waited until I heard the engine start before I called out, Hey, Brielle! She stopped, rolled down her window, and for just a second I saw hope flash across her face. That cutting board on the table? The maple one? I pointed at it. That's $60 if you're interested. I take Venmo. She stared at me for 5 seconds, then shouted, You know what? Screw you and your table. This was a mistake. I hate you. I smiled. You're welcome. I watched her car disappear down the street, then went back to sanding my coffee table. That evening, Sergio came over for dinner. We grilled burgers on my tiny patio, watched the sunset turn the mountains orange and red. Ramon told me Brielle came by, he said. Yup, she did. He drove by on his way to the store, saw her car in your driveway. How'd that go? She wanted a second chance. I offered to sell her a cutting board. Sergio nearly choked on his burger. You didn't. Wait, did she buy it? Shockingly, no. Some people just don't appreciate quality work. He shook his head, grinning. That's cold, man. We sat there as the sky darkened, stars coming out one by one. Somewhere out there, Brielle was driving back to a life that had fallen apart because she couldn't see what was right in front of her. And I was here, in my own place, surrounded by people who actually cared. I'll have my kids with a real man, she'd said. Yeah, now she'd be lucky if she found a guy who wanted her to have his. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.